My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a museum conservator. The day the lawsuit papers arrived, the world tilted, not with a crash, but with a sickening lurch. I was at my apartment, carefully mending a tear in an antique tapestry, when the courier knocked. The envelope was thick, heavy, official. Inside, the legal jargon swam before my eyes, but the core message was brutally clear. My parents, Catherine and Robert Vance, were suing me. Their claim? Undue influence over my grandmother, Rose Vance. They alleged I had somehow manipulated an elderly woman, my own grandmother, into leaving me her entire estate, her millions, instead of them. My hands, usually so steady, trembled as I read the phrase. They wanted every penny, and they were willing to drag Grandma's name through the mud and destroy our family to get it. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. They thought I would crumble, that I would just hand it over. They were wrong. To understand how my parents could do something so unthinkable, you need to understand the dynamics of our family, or rather, the lack of them. I was an only child, but often felt like an only afterthought. My parents, Catherine and Robert, were both ambitious professionals, my mother a high-powered marketing executive, my father a real estate developer. Their lives revolved around status, appearances, and the relentless pursuit of more. Dinner conversations were less about our day and more about their latest deals, the neighbor's new car, or the rising property values in our suburb. Emotional connection felt like a luxury they couldn't afford, or perhaps didn't understand. My grandmother, Rose, was the quiet counterpoint to their bustling, materialistic world. She was a retired botanist, a woman who found profound beauty in the delicate structure of a fern or the intricate patterns of a moth's wing. Grandma lived in a charming, slightly overgrown Victorian house on the edge of town, a place that smelled of old books, fresh earth, and her signature lavender potpourri. It was my sanctuary. While my parents were busy climbing the social ladder, Grandma Rose taught me to identify constellations, press wildflowers, and appreciate the quiet artistry of a perfectly crafted antique. She had a small, glass-fronted cabinet in her study filled with antique porcelain thimbles, each one a miniature work of art from a different era. Cleaning them with a soft brush, listening to her stories about their origins, was one of my favorite childhood rituals. She was my confidant, my anchor. My parents, however, viewed Grandma Rose with a mix of mild embarrassment and thinly veiled opportunism. They found her quiet life eccentric, her house dated. They'd visit, usually around holidays, and the conversation would inevitably drift to their latest investment opportunity or a loan they needed for a new venture. Grandma, always polite but firm, would deflect their requests with a gentle smile and an unyielding "I prefer to keep my finances simple, dear." They never understood her, or that her simple finances were, in fact, incredibly substantial, built on decades of shrewd, quiet investments and a family inheritance from her own parents. They just saw an old woman who lived in a house that could probably use a renovation. Grandma Rose passed away peacefully in her sleep at 88. It was a gentle end to a beautiful life, and while my heart ached, I was grateful for every moment we shared. I spent those first few days in a haze of grief, helping to arrange the memorial, sorting through her belongings. My parents, however, seemed to shift gears almost immediately. Before the funeral wreaths had even wilted, they were discussing the estate. She must have left us the house, at least, my mother mused, more to herself than to me, as if it were a foregone conclusion. My father nodded, already calculating potential renovation costs. I tried to steer the conversation back to Grandma, to her life, but their eyes glazed over. It was all about what she left. The will reading was held a week later in the office of Mr. Davies, Grandma's longtime attorney. He was a kind, silver-haired man who had known me since I was a child. My parents sat opposite me, radiating an air of expectation. Mr. Davies cleared his throat and began. He read through a few modest bequests to the local botanical garden, the historical society, and a scholarship fund for young artists. My parents exchanged impatient glances. Then, he paused, looking directly at me. "And to my beloved granddaughter, Eleanor Vance," he read, his voice clear and steady, "I leave the entirety of my estate, including all financial assets, properties, and personal belongings. This is to be hers, without conditions or encumbrances, to use as she sees fit." The silence in the room was deafening. My mother gasped, a sharp, choked sound. My father's face, usually so composed, flushed a deep, angry red. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, swiveled from Mr. Davies to me, then back again. They had been so certain. So absolutely certain. "What?" my mother finally managed, her voice a strained whisper. "The entirety? What about us? Her children?" Mr. Davies calmly explained that Grandma Rose had made her wishes explicitly clear, repeatedly, and had recently updated her will to reinforce them. He had even had her evaluated by an independent physician for mental capacity, just to be absolutely sure. The millions were mine. Days after the funeral, my parents came to my apartment, not to offer condolences or congratulations, but to discuss things. They didn't mention the thimbles, the books, or the garden. They talked only of money. "Eleanor, darling," my mother began, her voice falsely sweet, "we know Rose loved you very much, but this is unprecedented. It must be a mistake." She was confused. My father chimed in, "You're young, Eleanor. You don't know how to manage this kind of wealth. It's only right that we, as your parents, guide you. We could set up a joint account, manage it for you." They were suggesting I hand over my inheritance, their birthright, to them. I looked at them, truly looked at them, and saw only the glint of avarice in their eyes. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. Grandma was not confused. She knew exactly what she was doing. "And no, I will not be sharing it. This was her wish, and it is my inheritance." Their faces hardened. My mother accused me of being selfish, ungrateful. My father threatened vaguely about consequences. I just watched them, the reality of their character settling over me like a shroud. A week later, my mother called, her voice dripping with venom. "You leave us no choice, Eleanor. We've spoken to our lawyer. You manipulated an old woman. We're going to fight this. You'll regret this." I hung up, dismissing it as an empty threat, a desperate bluff. I thought they couldn't possibly go through with it. They were my parents. But the courier package proved me wrong. It confirmed that their love for money far outweighed any love they might have had for me, or for their own mother's memory. They were willing to burn everything down. Sitting there, the lawsuit papers spread across my coffee table, I finally understood. This wasn't about a misunderstanding or a perceived slight. It was about possession, about entitlement, about a bottomless well of greed. They didn't see me as their daughter, they saw me as an obstacle to what they believed was rightfully theirs. They didn't care about Grandma's wishes, they only cared about their own. The thimble collection, those delicate, precious objects my grandmother and I had so lovingly cared for, would have been sold off without a second thought, just another asset to liquidate. It was a stark, painful realization that the relationship I had always hoped to mend with them was, in fact, already broken beyond repair. I immediately called Mr. Davies, who was unsurprised but sympathetic. He put me in touch with Ms. Anya Sharma, a sharp, no-nonsense litigation attorney specializing in estate disputes. She listened patiently, then laid out the strategy. My parents' claim of undue influence was serious, but also common, and often difficult to prove if the deceased's mental capacity was sound. My job, she explained, was to provide every piece of evidence that demonstrated Grandma Rose's clear mind, her independent decision-making, and our genuine, loving relationship. My background as a conservator, meticulously cataloging and preserving artifacts, proved invaluable. I approached the task with the same methodical precision I applied to a fragile manuscript. First, I gathered all of Grandma Rose's journals. As a botanist, she had kept daily entries for decades, detailing her observations, her thoughts, her interactions. These journals were a treasure trove, demonstrating her sharp intellect right up until her final days. They contained detailed reflections on her investments, her charitable giving, and even her frustrations with my parents' constant financial requests. Next, I collected every letter she had ever sent me, and copies of my replies. These showed a consistent, deep bond, full of shared interests and mutual respect, not one of manipulation. Miss Sharma's team also secured affidavits from Grandma's longtime family doctor, who confirmed her excellent mental health, her gardener, who spent hours with her discussing plants and current events, and her closest neighbor, who often shared tea and conversation. All attested to Rose Vance's unwavering lucidity and strong will. The most crucial piece of evidence, however, came from a small, leather-bound notebook I found tucked away in her desk drawer, labeled Thoughts on the Future. Inside, in her elegant script, was a letter addressed directly to me, dated just 3 weeks before her passing. In it, she explicitly stated her reasons for leaving me everything, anticipating my parents' reaction. Eleanor, my dear. She had written, I know your parents will be disappointed. They always measured worth in dollars, in what they could acquire. But you, my clever girl, understand the true value of things, of history, of knowledge, of beauty, and of genuine connection. I chose you because I trust you to honor my memory and use what I leave wisely. This is your inheritance, a testament to our bond, not theirs. Do not let their greed diminish what we shared. Reading those words, I felt a surge of both sorrow and fierce resolve. Grandma had known. She had prepared me. Mediation was a disaster. My parents, bolstered by their own lawyer's bluster, were arrogant and unyielding. They refused to consider any settlement, convinced they had an open and shut case. They repeated their accusations, painting me as a conniving opportunist. I sat silently, my lawyer doing all the talking, knowing that their performance would ultimately mean nothing. The court date was set for a few months later. The day in court arrived with a gray, drizzling rain, mirroring the mood in the courtroom. I sat beside Miss Sharma, feeling a strange mix of dread and steel. My parents were on the other side, looking smug, confident in their entitlement. When Miss Sharma began her presentation, she didn't just speak about legal precedents, she painted a vivid picture of Grandma Rose, a woman of sharp intellect and deep affection. She presented the doctor's testimony, the detailed journals, the consistent financial records showing no unusual activity, and the sworn statements from Grandma's friends. Then came the moment. Miss Sharma held up the small leather-bound notebook. Your Honor, she said, this is a personal letter from the deceased, Rose Vance, to her granddaughter, Eleanor Vance, dated just weeks before her passing. It speaks volumes about her intentions and her clear state of mind. She read the passage aloud, the words echoing through the quiet courtroom. Eleanor, my dear, I know your parents will be disappointed. They always measured worth in dollars, in what they could acquire. But you, my clever girl, understand the true value of things, of history, of knowledge, of beauty, and of genuine connection. I chose you because I trust you to honor my memory and use what I leave wisely. This is your inheritance, a testament to our bond, not theirs. Do not let their greed diminish what we shared. As Miss Sharma finished, the air in the courtroom felt charged. My parents' faces, which moments before had been set in expressions of self-righteous indignation, crumpled. My mother looked utterly deflated, her eyes wide with shock. My father's jaw worked, but no words came out. Their lawyer, who had no such direct and damning counter-evidence, could only offer vague denials and rehash their original, now thoroughly discredited, accusations. The judge's ruling came swiftly and decisively. He dismissed my parents' claims of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity as entirely without merit, citing the overwhelming evidence of Grandma Rose's sound mind and clear intentions. He also noted the consistent pattern of my parents' financial overtures towards their mother, which, while not illegal, lent credence to Rose Vance's decision to protect her estate from their perceived avarice. My parents were ordered to pay a portion of my legal fees. They stormed out of the courtroom, not looking at me, their faces contorted with rage and humiliation. The relationship, already fractured, was now irrevocably shattered. There was no apology, no attempt to reconcile. In the following weeks, the silence from them was absolute. Some extended family members, who had either sided with my parents or remained neutral, now avoided me. But others, those who truly knew Grandma Rose, offered quiet support, understanding that I had simply honored her wishes. I inherited the millions. It was a substantial sum, far more than I had ever dreamed of, enough to secure my future and pursue my passions without financial constraint. The first thing I did was establish the Rose Vance Foundation, dedicated to supporting botanical research and art conservation, two causes my grandmother held dear. It felt right, a way to honor her legacy and ensure her values continued to make a difference. I also kept Grandma's house, not as a monument, but as a living space, a home filled with her spirit, where I could continue to learn and grow. My parents never reached out again, not directly. Years later, their lawyer sent a letter demanding their share of a small, antique silver locket they claimed was a family heirloom. I politely, firmly, refused. Sometimes, I still walk into Grandma's study. The afternoon sun filters through the lace curtains, illuminating the glass-fronted cabinet. Inside, the antique porcelain thimbles gleam, each one a tiny, perfect piece of history. I pick one up, a delicate Victorian piece with a hand-painted floral design, and remember Grandma's stories. They are still here, preserved, just as she wished. The thimbles still gleam, a quiet testament to a love that understood true value, a value my parents could never sue for.